If you've ever felt unsure about how to lift weights, how heavy to go, how many reps, how many days, and how to lift for strength and shape, but not adding bulk to your frame, this video is for you. You see, most of us in midlife, we were taught to use lighter weights, go high repetitions, and just keep adding more and more and more. But that doesn't work, especially after 40. It's not going to be giving you the best results. So I've studied exercise science for 20 years, but the real learning came when I turned 40. I was exhausted, I was inflamed, and I was completely stuck. And I thought it was just being 40, but it wasn't. And as newer research started to come out, something shifted. Now at age 46, lifting combined with walking completely changed my body and my energy. So I'm going to give you not only the newest research, but what I found works best for women in midlife. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 7 basics of strength training: how to lift, how many reps and sets, how often to train so that you can build strength, feel leaner, and start seeing results. I've also put this together in a free strength training guide for women over 35, and you can just get that QR code and download it. All right, so number 1, let's talk about how heavy we should be lifting. And some of us might need to unlearn some things because the most recent research was over 30,000 participants, which is a really large study. And it was very clear that strength is built most efficiently when the load is challenging. This means lift heavy. So by the end of our set, those last 2 to 3 reps should feel hard, but you could still do 1 to 3 more with good form. We call that leaving a few reps left in the tank. Scientifically, it's called RIR, or reps in reserve. That's the sweet spot. And this is where recent research even gets more helpful and more defined for your specific goals. Lifting heavy doesn't make you bulk up. It's the amount of volume, the sets and reps that you do over the week. So if your goal is strength and shape, but not unwanted size, stay tuned because we're going to cover that in a bit. So just how heavy? Let's think about a biceps curl. Now, if you're doing biceps curls, by rep 6 or 7, they should start feeling hard. You should be able to finish with good form by about 9 or 10 reps. And if you're doing that, then you've probably picked up the right amount of weight. But the mistake I see time and time again is not lifting heavy enough. It's about making sure your muscles are being challenged. Now, I'd love to just say use X amount of weight, but it's going to be different for everybody. Now, if you're just starting your journey and you're working out from home, I recommend beginners start with 5s, 10s, and 15s, because a sumo squat, you're going to lift heavier than a side-leaning lateral raise. Then as you get better, you can maybe add some 20s and 30s. For frame of reference, for me, it took me about a year to go from like 15s to those 20s or 30s. All right, number 2, lifting for bone strength, right? It's a thought in our head. We don't want to just lift for how our body looks. We lift for bone. And after 40, bone density starts to naturally decline. But the good news is your body responds really, really well to strength training. It also responds to jumping and force. But you don't need a separate bone workout. You simply need to lift heavy. That's what helps keep your bones strong. Now, this goes back to the Lift More trial. It's one of the most well-documented studies on bone density in women. It studied postmenopausal women with osteopenia, osteoporosis, and they had improved bone health by lifting heavier loads for 4 to 6 reps multiple times. Now, recent research has expanded on that, and it's not saying you have to go that heavy for 4 to 6 reps, but if you go pretty heavy and you feel challenged, between roughly 6 and 12 reps, you are getting your good bone strength. Now, number 3, how often should we lift? Most muscle groups should be trained at least twice per week, and spacing matters. About 48 hours between sessions gives your body time to recover and adapt. So you want to give a muscle group rest. You don't want to work it on consecutive days. And this is really important in your 40s. If you've ever gone from doing very little to suddenly working out 4 to 5 days a week with good intentions, right? And then a few weeks later, you notice you're more tired, you're more inflamed, down a little stuck. Well, we can't do our workouts, we can't stack them how we did in our 20s and 30s. In our 40s, it changes because of hormones. So training too much is not usually a motivation problem, it's a recovery problem. You've got to build in that recovery. And that's why most women in our 40s do really well strength training 3 times per week and then adding daily walking. Number 4, let's talk reps, because your body isn't tracking reps, it's tracking tension and effort. Now, the old thinking gave us a rep range of 6 to 20. In the newest research, it's all about how you feel at the end of a set. If you're at a gym, many women do well with a lower rep range of 4 to 8 reps because there's heavier equipment. For most women training at home, this works really well, around 6 to 10 reps for lower body and then around 8 to 12 reps for upper body. Why the difference between upper and lower? Well, we often do compound moves, which means multi-joint and multi-muscle when we are using our lower body, so we need to lift heavier. When we're doing our upper body, there's sometimes some more isolated work. So staying in that rep range helps you stay controlled, protect your joints, and then still get enough of that challenge. Remember, the key is how you feel at the end of that set. So doing as many repetitions as you need to feel that challenge and lifting heavy. In our workouts, I will always give you a recommended amount of weight and then a recommended range of reps. Number 5, how many sets? Well, a set is simply how many repetitions you do before resting or before moving on to the next exercise or doing a superset. For most women, if you're starting out, 2 sets is great. If you're more experienced, aim for 3 sets. That's enough to build strength and shape. But here's where the research really helps clarify things. What drives more noticeable muscle growth is not just the weight, not the dumbbell that you're lifting, it's the weekly volume. Hypertrophy, which basically means increasing muscle size, increases more when you're doing more. Now, we want to aim for about 10 to 20 sets per muscle group. But this is where many women kind of accidentally cross that line, doing too much volume. And if you've ever felt like I'm working out more than ever, but I feel puffy, or my legs feel heavier instead of more defined, it's not usually because you lifted heavy or lifted a heavy dumbbell. It's because you maybe got too much volume and you crossed over into too high a volume. Now, in our workouts, we carefully craft the week so that we stay in that sweet spot of strength and defined shoulders and lifted glutes without crossing into high volume where we see a lot of increases in muscle size. So we build strength, but we stay in that defined section. All right, number 6, exercise selection. I'm going to tell you this. Simplicity beats complexity. You don't need workouts that hop, spin, and constantly change. You need movements that load a muscle consistently so that your body can adapt. And this is where the word muscle confusion comes into play, and it can actually backfire. If you're always changing exercises, your body stays in a constant state of soreness and maybe some low-key inflammation. It really challenges your nervous system and stresses the body. And if hormones are in play, we don't want that. So if you feel a lot of like fluid retention or you're working hard but you're not seeing it, it's time to give your exercises some structure, to do the same movements 2 to 3 weeks before switching it up. And finally, number 7, you don't need a gym and you certainly don't need an hour to work out. At home, we can use dumbbells, bands, sliders, a bench or a staircase, a stability ball. We can use all of this equipment to mimic most gym movements. And that research study we keep talking about was talking a lot about at-home workouts. They are super effective. So whether you're just starting or you've been doing this for years, you can make real progress right here at home. I used to oversee 7 women's health clubs in my 20s and in my early 30s. I've been working at home for the last 12 years ever since, and I've seen more progress working out at home than I ever saw in the gym. So let's simplify this. Okay, so we need to lift a few times a week, never working a muscle group on consecutive days. We need to lift heavy enough so that the last few repetitions are challenging. That's where you find that sweet spot. Like they're challenging but doable. You want to make sure that you are walking, getting in that daily cardio, and you want to make sure that you do something that you can sustain. So does that mean I'm going to be working out 3 times a week? I'm going to strength train 3 times a week? Maybe 4 times a week. Maybe you need shorter workouts. I know in our studio, we have what we call the daily 15 for those seasons of life where you're just really stinking busy. It's 15-minute strength routines that you can do 5 days a week. So you want to find something that you can sustain. That's what I always say, consistency is where results live. And it's not just my motto, you will find it consistent in all of the research that consistency is more important than reps, than sets, than volume, and everything that we talked about here. And if you'd like my help, I'd love to help you. We have a free trial of the strength training in our studio where you can choose, I'm going to do the daily 15, I'm going to strength train 3 times a week, or I'm going to strength train 4 times a week. Maybe I'm more advanced and I need a little bit more. I will link that below for you.